Good evening. Welcome to a special edition of the programme. Tonight we're bringing you the story of gunman Raoul Moat and the two men who've just been found guilty of helping him, Carl Ness and Khurram Awan, seen here for the first time. Moat killed Chris Brown and seriously injured Sam Stobbart and PC David Rathband. After a week-long police manhunt, Moat shot himself, leaving a trail of destruction and an agony of grief for the victims' families and friends.
This is the gunman from Berkeley last night. My name is Raoul Moat.
Just that word policeman in Raoul's precarious mental state is like a red flag to a bull, you know.
Now I know what hate is, and I didn't before, because hate hurts.
Later, we'll be hearing from Ian Payne, who's at the scene of Chris Brown's murder in Berkeley. But first, let's join Kate Fisher, who's been following the case and is outside Newcastle Crown Court. Kate, what are the details of the verdict?
After a trial of 5.5 weeks, the jury of 6 men and 6 women have found Carl Ness guilty of all the charges against him, including the murder of Christopher Brown and the attempted murder of PC David Rathband. His co-accused Khurram Awan also found guilty of the attempted murder of PC Rathband, conspiracy to murder police officers and robbery. He was cleared of other firearms charges. Well, as those verdicts read out, there was a cry of yes from the dock, yes from the public gallery. In the dock, the defendants fell to their knees, clutching their faces in their hands. Carl Ness was visibly crying. There was weeping also from the public gallery by those affected by the crimes committed by these men. And one of those, the sister of Christopher Brown, Becky, gave her tribute to him outside court.
He is missed hugely by all who knew him. We have been left devastated by the loss, and our lives have changed forever since we received that news on the Saturday. Today's guilty verdict has come as a great relief to us. We'd like to thank the officers from Northumbria Police for their efforts in bringing the case to court and ensuring that justice has been done. And we'd like to thank everyone who assisted them in the inquiry. We'd also like to thank everyone for their kind thoughts through an extremely difficult time for us. We hope that Christopher is now at peace.
Well, Becky and her mother sat in the front row of the public gallery next to PC David Rathband and his wife, Kath, the four linking arms and holding hands as they heard the verdicts read out. PC David Rathband remaining a dignified silence throughout, just holding his weeping wife, Kath. Well, outside court, his words were for the family and for Chris Brown.
My family and I are extremely pleased with the verdicts that have been delivered today. I also want to pay tribute to Chris Brown. I never met Chris Brown, and that's my loss. His family have showed extreme dignity, and I'm extremely pleased that Chris Brown has had the justice delivered today that he so rightly deserved in the way that he was coldly executed. These two individuals have been convicted and have continued to lie throughout. So they will now both go to prison as convicted criminals and both liars. And I'm extremely pleased with that.
Well, another man extremely pleased by today's verdicts is Detective Superintendent Jim Napier, the man leading the investigation into the crimes of Khurram Awan and Carl Ness. Today, he paid tribute to their victims, and he said that he had always believed that Raoul Moat was not working alone.
In my view, Ness and Awan are cowards. They have taken absolutely no responsibility for their actions. They have offered no apologies to the victims. They're now going to have quite a long time to reflect on that.
Well, we won't know just how long that will be until Tuesday morning when the judge passes his sentence. But for the victims and their families and friends, today marks an important milestone in building that road to recovery and rebuilding their lives.
Kate Fisher, thank you very much. Well, now let's join Ian in Berkeley, where Raoul Moat, helped by Ness, wounded Sam Stobbart and murdered her new boyfriend, Chris Brown.
Pam, this is where Chris Brown was murdered by Raoul Moat. It was directly outside the house where, just minutes earlier, Chris had been enjoying a drink with Samantha Stobbart, Moat's former girlfriend. After killing Chris at point-blank range, Moat shot Sam through the house window. Kenny Toll now examines what led up to Moat stalking the couple and then shooting them down.
Locked inside Durham prison, Raoul Moat, already a paranoid and angry man, discovers his girlfriend Samantha Stobbart is seeing someone else. It was news he'd suspected and news he'd been preparing for, in more ways than one. Telephone conversations between Moat and Carl Ness show the lengths he would go to and how he used his friends.
I needed to go to hers. If you park in front of a turn-off, you can see anybody going down the street. Get yourself sitting in the back of the car, go through the bins and that, see if you can find anything. Get yourself ready and get yourself over there. Take wages for it.
Ness had been acting as Moat's private detective, watching Samantha Stobbart's every move. From inside his prison cell, Moat's jealousy pushed him over the edge.
There's no doubt in my mind that Raoul was suffering from mental illness when he did what he did. And I think it was just the fact that he felt he was trapped in there. He was in prison. He couldn't speak to anybody outside of prison. He was just getting information back from friends. That would put anybody under an immense amount of stress. And if somebody was in a very precarious mental position to start with, that was the last straw, really, the straw that broke the camel's back, from what it seems to me.
When Moat was released from prison on July the 1st, he'd already made plans. He'd bought what police believe was a shotgun from two associates and spent much of that day and the next putting things in place. By his side throughout was Carl Ness. Moat was filmed on CCTV buying provisions at a local B&Q store and captured coming and going on the cameras Moat himself had installed in his own house. Ironic it was those same cameras that would help to track their movements.
This is typical of an extreme case of paranoid personality disorder, which is not an illness, but what is a lifelong condition. This is someone who is constantly on their guard because of their extreme suspiciousness.
On July the 2nd, Moat made a number of angry telephone calls to Samantha Stobbart. He told her he knew she was seeing someone else, and that he knew he was a karate instructor. He also knew where he held classes. She told him her new boyfriend was a policeman. She told the court she hoped this would scare him off.
Just that word policeman in Raoul's precarious mental state is like a red flag to a bull, you know.
In fact, Moat was a man obsessed. He told his ex-girlfriend he wanted to come to Birtley for a straightener with Chris Brown. In other words, a fight. But the couple were determined not to let Moat's phone calls upset them. Samantha was trying to move on. So that night they headed to Gateshead for drinks at this pub. It was to be the last time that anyone would see them in public again. Their night was cut short after more angry phone calls, and the couple headed back to Birtley, where they would join her mother and neighbours for a late-night drink. It was a happy scene, one filled with laughter and stories of what the women would dress up as at a fancy dress party the following night. But outside, Moat was lurking in the shadows. His paranoia convincing him the laughter he could hear was directed towards him. Just after 1 o'clock, Carl Ness sent Moat a text that read, "We will all miss you, mate, if it goes down." A short time later, after hearing more laughter, Moat replied, "They are all in this house and I'm in the garden, slagging me off nice and proper." At 2:03, Moat texted again. "My suffering is so funny apparently. I'm going to kick off nice and proper when they come out. Then we'll see who's laughing. I'm gutted it's come to this. It's so hard to listen to this, coming from Sam." And then 20 minutes later, he sent a final text. "They've just opened the window, so I'm tempted to lean in. What do you reckon? Chance it or not?" A short time later, Samantha and Chris Brown left the house and Moat appeared from nowhere. Chris Brown instinctively walked in front of Samantha and Moat shot him twice. She then fled back into the house where she heard a third gunshot. She told the court, "I knew then that it was done." With Chris Brown still lying on the floor, moving, Moat then pointed the gun towards him and held it no more than a foot from his head and executed him. He then turned the gun on Samantha, shooting at her through the window and leaving her bleeding on the floor and fighting for her life.
Kenny Toll reporting. Well, the trial has been a traumatic experience for the relatives and the friends of Chris Brown. He'd only been living in the northeast for a matter of months before he was murdered. His family believe that with the spotlights on Moat's other victims, Chris's story has been largely overlooked. Now they've decided to speak out. Helen Ford met them at their home in Slough.
I'd got up early and it was on the news. I can remember sitting there thinking, that poor mum, what is she going to do? Now I know.
That day changed our lives forever. Forever.
Chris Brown was a 29-year-old karate instructor. His life ended suddenly and violently when he was shot dead by Raoul Moat. The reason was simply that he'd begun a relationship with Moat's former partner, Samantha Stobbart.
Quite a few people can't, can they?
I don't know, sometimes.
Yeah.
At his family home in Berkshire, Chris's friends are gathering to remember the man they knew as Brownie.
You always knew he was there, you could hear him before you saw him.
Had some brilliant times, good fishing.
He loved his fishing, didn't he? He had his moments and he was always laughing. He was just a typical lad, basically. Enjoying life.
Lindsay Whittington grew up with Chris. They attended judo classes together. Lindsay even went on holiday with Chris's family.
Don't matter how down you were, he could always pick you up. He'd just have to say one thing. Well, it would just be something like, hello, treacle, or something like that, and you just knew you were going to be in a better mood because he was there. So, yeah, he was one of a kind.
That's where Christopher used to be. His karate with his children.
As Chris grew up, he discovered a passion for karate. Friends say it transformed him. Chris hoped it could change others too.
That was his goal in life, just to teach people things and, yeah, just to change their lives, basically.
He was really strict with the kids round here that he'd signed up. If he saw them out in the street fighting, he'd go over there and say, you're not supposed to be doing this out here. You know, there's a time and a place. You know where you release your energy and it's not on the street.
A short time later, on a Tyneside street, Chris Brown met his death when he was confronted by Raoul Moat. Chris Brown grew up in Windsor. He attended the school behind me. He only moved to the northeast 8 months before he was shot dead. And that, according to his family, is why he's become a forgotten victim of this crime.
I can't watch it with the police force because they've been brilliant and they're...
Yeah.
Absolutely, Christopher's first and foremost, but
with the public eye,
the public eye, he's
it's
just another number.
Christopher who? Yeah, you got it in one.
Just another
Just
number.
Another
you know
number
who?
to add to the list of unfortunate and unlucky people that have been murdered before.
What are your feelings about Raoul Moat?
I actually now know what hate is, and I didn't before, because hate hurts. It really hurts.
I don't feel anything for him. Absolutely nothing. He's not even... He doesn't even come into my thoughts or nothing. He's just not there.
Chris Brown was not only a son and brother, he had children of his own. His family say all have become victims of this brutal crime and all will bear the scars for the rest of their lives.
It's hard to imagine that he's not going to be walking through the door because he should be here with all of them. All of us.
He was just an everyday lad, just doing what he wanted to do and got mixed up with the wrong crowd at the wrong time, obviously. This is how it ended up.
Helen Ford reporting from Slough. The shooting of Chris Brown and Samantha Stobbart was just the beginning of Moat's journey of paranoid revenge. He believed Sam when she told him that Chris was a police officer. But far from scare him off, Moat wanted vengeance for the loss of his girlfriend and other grievances on the Northumbria police force itself. His third victim would be PC David Rathband. Ben Chapman takes up the story.
In the early hours of July the 4th, Carl Ness and Khurram Awan helped Raoul Moat to try to kill PC David Rathband. The gunman had set out that night to shoot police officers. Today, police released this image, taken from the patrol car, showing the black Lexus driven by Awan as they scoped out their target. Less than an hour later, Moat shot him twice through the glass, leaving him blind and fighting for life. Today, following the verdict, he spoke of his relief at finally getting justice.
These two individuals have been convicted and have continued to lie throughout, so they will now both go to prison as convicted criminals and both liars, and I'm extremely pleased with that. I have a lifetime to live and they have a lifetime to reflect. I'm sure I'm better placed than them.
For David and his family, the trial's been an ordeal. He attended court most days and relived his horrific experience in the witness box. He listened as the court was told how Raoul Moat got out of his car and made his way towards the patrol car carrying a shotgun. In his own harrowing evidence, PC Rathband described how he became aware of a crouched figure moving towards him. He said he saw a white flash of bright light before feeling a sharp pain between his eyes. Moat then shot him a second time. He said he had to play dead to stay alive. In the 8 months since that morning, David's journey's been painful, often emotional, but inspiring too, as he's recovered visibly, come to terms with his blindness and rebuilt his life, determined to beat his would-be killers. Today, he left court still a serving police officer. They couldn't take that, and it's something of which he remains extremely proud.
I worked extremely hard to do a job that I wanted to do, and I refuse to have that taken away from me.
During his recovery, of course, David has set up the Blue Lamp Foundation charity to help emergency services personnel injured in the line of duty. Back to you, Pam.
The man who led the investigation says it was one of the most challenging cases he's ever faced. Detective Superintendent Jim Napier says he was always convinced that Raoul Moat was being helped, both during the shootings and the manhunt which followed in Rothbury. But Carl Ness and Khurram Awan claim that they were hostages, not accomplices. Kate Fisher reports.
The last few moments of freedom for Raoul Moat's two accomplices. Smoke flares are released as armed officers surround Carl Ness in the red and Khurram Awan following behind. Their arrest on a road near Rothbury filmed from a police helicopter hovering above. But at this stage, officers couldn't be sure if the men were helping Raoul Moat or being held hostage by him.
There was suspicions that these guys may have been involved, but I had no other option but to treat them as hostages until such times as I could secure their safety, and then we deal with them as the suspects.
Both men had written letters to their families and friends saying that they'd been taken hostage, but this one from Awan suggests that in fact he was safer than safe. But for the loved ones who received them, it was terrifying.
Jaw drops, feel sick, not knowing what to do. First thing I did, I rang his sister and says, I've received a note stating that your brother's been taken hostage. And then we take them down to the police station.
It is really unusual, and that's why it made it difficult, because at one moment we were able to be quite open with the media and the public in particular, and then we had to go quite covert in terms of what we were dealing with, and it was a really difficult situation and a really difficult balance to strike. But there's no doubt that these two individuals, Carl Ness and Khurram Awan, were working with Moat in his criminal activities. They knew exactly what was going on and they were willing to help him.
And in the case of Carl Ness, that help began with the murder of Chris Brown and the wounding of his girlfriend Samantha Stobbart.
He never pulled the trigger, but I'm absolutely convinced that Carl Ness, from a very, very early stage, even before Raoul Moat was released from prison, was working towards identifying who Sam's new boyfriend was. He made preparation trips up to Chesterley Street to try and find locations where they might be able to find Sam's new boyfriend. So for me, he was absolutely complicit in the planning and the preparation and therefore the murder of Christopher Brown, which I would have to say was nothing more than a cold-blooded execution.
Raoul Moat fled on foot from the devastation he'd caused, walking to Chesterley Street, where he found a taxi to take him to meet his accomplices, Carl Ness and Kurama Wan. The pair claimed that Raoul Moat was forcing them to do what he wanted, but the police say that these pictures of them seemingly carefree, shopping for supplies just a few hours after the shooting, shows that they were not living in fear. This map of Awan's route through Newcastle even shows he went to a shop right next to a police station, but crucially did not go inside to get help.
You could see for the CCTV footage, they appeared relaxed and comfortable when they were out shopping in Alnwick or Newcastle. So for me, they've just blatantly misled friends, family, the courts in terms of what their intentions were and what the situation was in terms of the relationship with Moat.
Kurama Wan drives his black Lexus over a roundabout in Newcastle. Carl Ness is next to him. From the back seat, Raoul Moat is looking for police officers to shoot. Chillingly, the car is captured in this picture, taken by the camera installed on PC David Rathband's patrol car. Raoul Moat calls 999.
This is the gunman from Berkeley last night. My name is Raoul Moat. What I'm phoning about is to tell you exactly why I've done what I've done. Right? Now, my girlfriend has been having an affair behind my back with one of your officers, this gentleman that I shot last night, the karate instructor. Right?
Minutes later, he shot again, this time leaving PC David Rathband blind and bleeding. The man leading the investigation said that this crime in action was like no other he's ever worked on.
A man died as a result of these individuals' actions. Christopher Brown lost his life and his mum lost a son. I hope they can now get some comfort in the justice from this trial.
Tonight, Carl Ness and Kurama Wan are both absorbing their guilty verdicts. But for the family of Awan, this isn't the end. They've stood by him throughout and tonight are preparing to appeal. They've spoken exclusively to Kenny Toll.
It's the prosecution's job to prosecute, to paint a defendant in the worst possible light with the evidence that they've got. They're not here to necessarily say what is true. They're here to prosecute a case. And that doesn't always translate to what a person is actually really like. There's nobody that can say he's aggressive or that he's a mean-spirited person or that he's violent or that he's a bully, because it's not true.
I just want to sort of convey to people who watch the show what he's like, and he's just not the person that has been sort of portrayed in the media that you can see. When you read what's going on about it and you see all the charges that are listed against him, you wouldn't put him with that person. It's like living in a Twilight Zone at the moment.
I can't say a bad thing about him because he's never done anything bad to me. And he's never done a bad thing in his life. He sees the good in everybody, which I think was his downfall, because he can get on with a complete and utter, because he's such a likeable lad.
What has this done? Sum up what it's done to your family.
What hasn't it done, really, is the question. None of us, while it was happening, could eat or sleep. When it first happened, we had to send my daughter away to my in-laws because we just plain and simply didn't know what was going to happen. It's fractured the family and it's fractured the community as well, because he is well known in the community, he is well liked in the community. What I have to say and what other people have to say about my brother might not change people's minds, but we're prepared for that. He knows the truth. We know the truth. And the people that love him know the truth. Juries and judges get it wrong. If they didn't, we wouldn't have an appeal court system. We're not going to sit back and take it. We will pursue it until we can't take it any further.
We've heard the details of today's guilty verdicts on Raoul Moat's accomplices, and Carl Ness and Khurram Awan will be sentenced on Tuesday. But the impact of the crimes they helped Moat commit still reverberate around the communities where he played out his revenge. The town of Rothbury in Northumberland was under the spotlight during the week-long manhunt. But what about Birtley, where it all began? Ian.
Yes, Pam, this quiet residential area with its neat streets had to absorb the shock of Raoul Moat killing Chris Brown and shooting Samantha Stobart. The community's come together and it's tried to recover. Councillor Cathy King represents Birtley on Gateshead Council. Councillor, what was the effect on this neighbourhood, this community, at the time of the shootings?
Total disbelief, complete and utter horror, absolute tragedy that's happened here was met with the greatest of sadness. We couldn't at first believe this had actually happened here in this quiet area.
We've seen the communities of Rothbury and of course in West Cumbria with the dreadful shootings there also. How has this community come together to move forward?
Oh, this is a resilient community. We've always thought of ourselves as a rural area. We are rural in the way that we think and do things. We support each other. Everyone, families came to ensure that their grandparents, their parents were all right. We had grandchildren making sure they stayed overnight with grandparents. We had youth and community workers.
Councillor, it's good to hear that things are positive and moving forward. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
This afternoon on this spot, the family of Chris Brown, after hearing the verdicts in court, came here to lay flowers. They came here to Birtley, the spot where Chris was killed, where a son, a brother, a father lost his life. Pam.
Thanks, Ian. Just to remind you of the jury's verdict before we go. 23-year-old Khurram Awan and Carl Ness, aged 26, have been found guilty this afternoon of being Raoul Moat's accomplices. Ness was found guilty of murdering Chris Brown, and they were both convicted of the attempted murder of PC David Rathband, conspiracy to murder police officers and robbery. From this special edition of the programme, a very good night.